She banned me from dinner. She didn't know I owned the restaurant. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because you do not want to miss the story I'm about to tell you today. It's wild, it's juicy, and it's one of those moments where life hands you the perfect plot twist. Picture this: a snobby, entitled woman bans a guy from a fancy dinner at a high-end restaurant, thinking she's all high and mighty. But what she doesn't know, that guy she just humiliated? Yeah, he owns the restaurant. Oh, you know this is gonna be good. So, grab a snack, settle in, and let's dive into this crazy story. Here we go. Let me set the scene for you. My name's Alex, and this all happened a few years ago when I was 32. Living in a bustling city known for its vibrant food scene. I'd always been passionate about food, ever since I was a kid, sneaking into my mom's kitchen to whip up questionable recipes that sometimes turned out amazing, and sometimes, well, let's just say they were experimental. By the time I hit my late 20s, I'd worked my way up in the restaurant world, starting as a dishwasher, then a line cook, then a manager, until finally, I took a leap of faith and opened my own place. It was called La Bella Vita, a sleek, upscale Italian restaurant that quickly became the spot in town. Think candlelit tables, handmade pasta, wine lists longer than a CVS receipt, and a vibe that screamed sophistication, but still felt warm and inviting. Now, running a restaurant isn't all glitz and glamour. It's long hours, endless stress, and dealing with all kinds of people, some amazing, some not so much, but I loved it. I poured my heart and soul into La Bella Vita, and it paid off. We were booked solid weeks in advance, and we'd even gotten a few nods from local food critics. Life was good. I wasn't exactly rolling in millions, but I was proud of what I'd built, and I made it a point to stay humble. I didn't walk around with a neon sign saying, "I own this place." I dressed casually, worked alongside my staff, and often mingled with customers, as if I was just another employee. That's important for the story, so keep that in mind. Now let's introduce the star of this drama. Well, the villain really. Her name was Karen. Yeah, I know. The name alone probably paints a picture, but this woman took the stereotype to a whole new level. Karen was a regular at La Bella Vita, but not the kind of regular you look forward to seeing. She was in her late 40s, always dressed like she was auditioning for a Real Housewives spin-off, with a designer handbag slung over her arm and a permanent scowl that could curdle milk. She'd come in with her little entourage, usually a mix of her equally snooty friends, or some poor soul she'd roped into being her date. And she'd treat my staff like they were her personal servants. The first time I met Karen, I was working the front of house, helping out the hostess during a busy Friday night. She stormed in, late for her reservation, and immediately started snapping her fingers at my hostess, Mia, who's one of the sweetest people you'll ever meet. "Excuse me, girl," Karen said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Do you know who I am? I've been coming here since you were in diapers, and I expect my table to be ready the second I walk in." Mia, bless her, stayed professional, apologized for the 5-minute wait, and got Karen's group seated. But I saw the look on Mia's face, and it took everything in me not to step in right then. I figured, okay, maybe Karen was just having a bad day. Spoiler alert, she wasn't. Over the next few months, Karen became infamous among the staff. She'd send back perfectly cooked dishes because they were too cold or too hot. She'd complain about the wine, even though she'd ordered the cheapest bottle on the menu. One time, she yelled at a server for breathing too loudly while taking her order. Yeah, you heard that right, breathing too loudly. The staff started calling her the dragon behind her back, and I couldn't blame them. But here's the thing, I didn't want to ban her outright. She was a paying customer, and as long as she wasn't breaking any laws, I figured we'd just deal with her Besides, my philosophy was always to kill him with kindness. Little did I know, Karen was about to push me to my limit. Fast forward to the night everything went down. It was a Saturday, our busiest night of the week, and La Bella Vita was packed. The energy was electric, tables filled with happy diners, the clink of wine glasses, the hum of conversation, and the smell of fresh basil and garlic wafting from the kitchen. I was in my usual mode, floating between the dining room and the back, checking on things, helping out where needed. I wasn't dressed like the stereotypical owner. That night, I had on a simple black button-up and jeans, blending in with the staff. To most customers, I probably looked like just another manager or server. Karen had booked a private dining room for a special event, a dinner party for her socialite friends. She'd been extra demanding leading up to it, calling the restaurant multiple times to micromanage every detail. She wanted a custom menu, specific table settings, even a particular brand of sparkling water that we didn't carry. My team bent over backward to accommodate her, because that's what we do. We pride ourselves on making every guest feel special, even the difficult ones. Around 7 p.m., I was at the hostess stand, chatting with Mia, when Karen swept in like she was walking the red carpet. Her group trailed behind her, 6 or 7 people, all dressed to the nines, looking like they'd spent more on their outfits than I spent on my car. Karen was in full dragon mode, barking orders at Mia before she even reached the desk. "I hope you people didn't mess this up," she said, tossing her coat at Mia like she was a coat rack. "This is a very important dinner, and I will not tolerate any mistakes." Mia, as always, stayed calm and led the group to the private dining room. I followed at a distance, just to make sure everything was going smoothly. The room looked perfect. Elegant table settings, soft lighting, fresh flowers, the works. Karen's group settled in, and our best server, Jake, started taking their drink orders. I figured I'd pop into the kitchen to check on the food, but before I could, I heard Karen's voice cut through the air like a foghorn. Excuse me," she shouted, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. I turned around and saw her standing up, pointing at Jake like he'd just committed a crime. "This is unacceptable. I specifically requested the vintage Merlot, and you bring me this swill." She held up a glass of wine like it was toxic waste. Jake, who's a pro, apologized and explained that we didn't have the exact vintage she'd requested, but we'd substituted it with a comparable, higher quality bottle at no extra cost. Most people would have been thrilled, but not Karen. She launched into a tirade, calling Jake incompetent, questioning his intelligence, and demanding to speak to the manager. That's when I stepped in. I walked over, put on my best customer service smile, and said, "Hi ma'am, I'm Alex. I oversee operations here. Is there something I can help you with?" Karen barely looked at me, before waving her hand dismissively. "I don't need some low-level manager," she snapped. "I want the owner. Where's the owner? I'm not dealing with underlings tonight." Now, this was the moment I could have said, "You're looking at him." But I didn't. Call it curiosity, call it amusement. But I wanted to see how far she'd take this. So I said, "I'm sorry, the owner isn't available right now, but I'm happy to assist." That was like pouring gasoline on a fire. Karen's face turned red, and she started yelling about how she was a VIP, how she'd spent thousands at this restaurant, and how she deserved better treatment. Her friends nodded along, sipping their swill wine like it was a 5-star vintage. Then she said something that changed everything. "You know what?" she sneered, leaning toward me. "You're useless. I don't want you anywhere near my dinner. You're banned from this room. Get out and don't come back unless I say so." Her friends laughed, and one of them even clapped like this was some kind of reality TV showdown. I stood there, stunned, not because I was offended, but because I couldn't believe the audacity. Banned? From my own restaurant? Oh, Karen, you have no idea who you're talking to. I kept my cool, nodded, and said, "Of course, ma'am. I'll make sure everything is taken care of." Then I walked out of the room, straight to the kitchen, where my staff was already buzzing about the drama. Jake filled me in on the rest of Karen's complaints. She'd sent back an appetizer because it was too rustic and demanded a new one be made from scratch. The kitchen was scrambling to keep up with her demands while still serving the rest of the packed restaurant. At this point, I had a choice. I could let Karen run the show, keep terrorizing my staff, and hope she'd eventually leave. Or I could do something about it. I chose the latter. But I wasn't going to stoop to her level with a screaming match or a public humiliation. No, I wanted this to be a moment she'd never forget. A moment where she'd realize she wasn't as powerful as she thought. I called a quick huddle with my team. "All right, guys," I said. "Karen thinks she's in charge, but we're gonna show her how La Bella Vita does things. Here's the plan." I laid it out step by step, and the staff's eyes lit up. They were in. This was going to be epic. Step 1. I told Jake to go back to the private dining room and inform Karen that the owner had been notified and would be addressing her concerns personally. But instead of sending me in right away, we'd let her stew a bit. Jake returned to the room, delivered the message, and came back reporting that Karen was smug, saying things like, "Finally, someone with authority, and this place needs a real leader." Oh, Karen, just wait. Step 2. We amped up the service for her table, but in a way that was subtly over the top. Every time she raised her voice or made a demand, we'd respond with exaggerated politeness. "Of course, madam, right away. Your wish is our command." We refilled her water glass every 5 seconds, swapped out her silverware after every bite, and brought her a new napkin every time she so much as touched the one she had. It was like a choreographed performance, and the rest of her group started to look uncomfortable, like they knew something was off, but couldn't quite put their finger on it. Step 3. I had our chef, Maria, prepare a special dish for Karen's table. Maria was a genius in the kitchen, and she whipped up a dessert that was almost too beautiful to eat. A deconstructed tiramisu with edible gold leaf and a hand-painted chocolate garnish. When Jake presented it to the table, he announced, "Compliments of the owner, who insists that only the finest guests receive this exclusive dish." Karen ate it up, literally and figuratively. She was beaming, thinking she'd finally gotten the VIP treatment she deserved. Now, here's where things get fun. While Karen was basking in her perceived victory, I slipped into the back office and pulled up the restaurant's social media accounts. We had a decent following, and I decided it was time to share a little behind-the-scenes moment with our fans. I posted a vague but cheeky update. Big night at La Bella Vita. We're rolling out the red carpet for a very special guest who loves to make a scene. Stay tuned for how this one ends. Restaurant life. VIP vibes. I didn't name names, of course, but anyone in the restaurant that night would know exactly who I was talking about. By this point, Karen's dinner was winding down. Her group had eaten their way through the custom menu, polished off the fancy dessert, and Karen was loudly proclaiming to her friends that she'd saved the evening by demanding to speak to the owner. That's when I decided it was time for the grand finale. I changed into a sharper outfit. Nothing crazy, just a tailored blazer and a crisp shirt. Something that said, "I'm in charge," without screaming it. Then I walked back into the private dining room, where Karen was holding court, telling her friends how she'd taught this place a lesson. The room went quiet as I stepped in, and Karen looked up, clearly expecting someone else. "Good evening, everyone," I said, smiling. "I'm Alex, the owner of La Bella Vita. I heard there was an issue tonight, and I wanted to address it personally." The color drained from Karen's face. Her friends froze, their forks halfway to their mouths. You could have heard a pin drop. Karen stammered, You're the owner. But you were just." She gestured vaguely, trying to process that the useless underling she'd banned was, in fact, the guy who owned the whole place. "That's right," I said, keeping my tone calm but firm. "I was happy to step out earlier when you asked, but I thought it was important to check in before you leave. I understand you had some concerns about the service, the food, and, well, pretty much everything. I'm sorry to hear that, because at La Bella Vita, we pride ourselves on treating every guest like family. But it seems like maybe we're not the right fit for you." Karen opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. "No need to explain," I said. "I've spoken with my team, and we've decided that, moving forward, we'll be reserving our tables for guests who respect our staff and our values. So, unfortunately, we won't be able to accommodate you here in the future. Your meal tonight is on the house, as a thank you for your past visits, but this will be your last dinner at La Bella Vita." The room was silent. Karen's friends looked like they wanted to sink into the floor. One of them mumbled something about how the food was great, but Karen just sat there, her face a mix of shock and rage. She finally managed to sputter, "This is outrageous. Do you know who I am? I could ruin this place." I smiled and said, "I know exactly who you are, ma'am, and I'm confident La Bella Vita will be just fine. Safe travels." Then I turned and walked out, leaving her to stew in her own embarrassment.